Hello everyone. The world is amazingly diverse, and laws in different countries can sometimes seem absurd. But the most interesting thing is that some of them are still officially in effect, despite being enacted decades, even centuries, ago. These rules reflect the culture, mentality, traditions, and even the historical fears of the societies in which they arose. In this collection, we've compiled 15 of the most unusual, strange, and even bizarre laws that are still in effect. Read carefully. Some of them may surprise even those who consider themselves experts in world culture and jurisprudence. 1. Chewing gum ban in Singapore. Singapore still has a strict ban on the sale and use of chewing gum. This law was introduced in 1992, when the country's authorities decided that chewing gum was causing too much damage to the city. It was being stuck to subway seats, elevator doors, and even train locks, causing breakdowns and costly cleaning. Fines for violations are hefty. Simply chewing gum can cost hundreds of dollars, and selling it can even result in jail time. An exception was made only for medicinal gum, such as nicotine gum, which is available with a prescription. Although the law seems absurd to tourists, Singaporeans consider it an important part of maintaining cleanliness and order in the city-state. It is precisely because of these strict measures that Singapore is often called one of the cleanest places in the world. 2. Ban on dyeing in the British Parliament. A surprising law exists in the Palace of Westminster, the seat of the British Parliament. Dyeing is prohibited there. The reason for this goes back centuries. By tradition, anyone who dies on the premises of the Parliament is automatically entitled to state honors and a funeral. To avoid unnecessary expense and ceremony, this absurd ban was introduced. Of course, in practice, it's impossible to punish someone for this violation, but the very existence of such a law is astonishing. Moreover, this rule hasn't been repealed and remains formally in effect, remaining a symbol of British tradition and bureaucracy. Tourists and locals alike like to cite this law as an example of typical British humor, although in reality, it stems from long-standing government regulations and attempts to control the costs of monarchical ceremonies. 3. Feeding pigeons in Venice is banned. Venice is famous for its pigeon-filled squares. However, since 2008, a law has been in effect prohibiting feeding these birds. The reason is simple. Pigeons have become a real scourge for historic buildings. Their droppings destroy stone facades and marble, and their uncontrolled breeding threatens the health of residents and tourists. Violators face fines, and local authorities strictly enforce the law. For tourists accustomed to the romantic image of feeding birds in St. Mark's Square, this ban came as a surprise. However, it is precisely this ban that helps preserve the city's architectural heritage. Now, in Venice, you can admire the pigeons from afar, but avoid interacting with them. This law is an example of how concern for culture and history prevails over habit. 4. Mandatory lighting in Italian aquariums. In Italy, there's a law that may surprise animal lovers. Aquarium owners are required to provide their fish not only with clean water and food, but also with a regular lighting regime. Furthermore, keeping fish in completely round aquariums is prohibited, as it's considered harmful to their health. Authorities explain this as a matter of animal welfare. Round glass distorts the view and causes stress for the fish. These laws make Italy one of the countries with the most respect for animal rights. Tourists often smile when they learn of these rules, but they demonstrate how even small details can reflect a nation's commitment to wildlife. 5. High heels banned in Greece. At ancient ruins in Greece, including the famous Acropolis, wearing high-heeled shoes is prohibited. The reason is simple. Heels can damage the historic stone slabs, which are thousands of years old. To preserve these monuments for future generations, authorities have adopted this unusual law. Violators can be fined and asked to leave the area. This rule often comes as a surprise to tourists, as few expect their fashionable footwear to be outlawed. But it is precisely these measures that help protect the country's unique cultural heritage. This law is an example of how, in the modern world, we must adapt to preserve history. 6. Mandatory funerals with music in Indonesia. In some parts of Indonesia, there is a law requiring music to accompany funerals. This is believed to help the soul of the deceased pass on to the next world. Musicians must play traditional melodies, creating an atmosphere of respect and joy. This may seem strange to foreigners, as many cultures associate funerals solely with mourning. But in Indonesia, death is seen as a transition, not an end, and the law helps preserve this philosophy. 7. Fish flipping prohibition in China. In some regions of China, a traditional law exists: fish should not be flipped on a plate. This is especially true for meals in coastal areas. Flipping a fish is considered bad luck, symbolizing a capsized boat and misfortune for the fisherman. Violating this rule is perceived as disrespectful to the host. Although this law is more rooted in tradition than punishment, it still remains a cultural practice and is considered mandatory. 8. Mandatory listening to the national anthem in Cuba. In Cuba, there is a law requiring all citizens to stand when the national anthem is played and listen to it standing. Violating this rule can be considered disrespectful to the state and can result in punishment. This rule may come as a surprise to tourists, but for Cubans, it is a standard part of patriotic education. The anthem is perceived not only as a symbol of the country, but also as part of an ideological tradition strictly protected by the state. 9. Ban on leaving keys in mailboxes in Japan. In Japan, there is a law prohibiting leaving keys in mailboxes, even if it seems a convenient method of delivery. This is a security measure. Thieves have long since learned to exploit such habits. Authorities decided to enshrine the ban in law to reduce the number of burglaries. While this may seem trivial to tourists and foreigners, the Japanese take these rules seriously. The country is known for its attention to detail, and this law is part of its overall system of citizen protection. 10. Mandatory sunbathing in Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan has passed a surprising law: school children are required to sunbathe to improve their health. Teachers take children outside to get their vitamin D. The law is part of a state program to improve the nation's health. While this may sound unusual for people in cold climates, in sunny Turkmenistan this practice is quite feasible. Such measures illustrate how different governments view their citizens' health in different ways. Strange laws aren't just curiosities, they reflect cultural characteristics, historical experiences, and worldviews. Some seem absurd, others make us smile, but they all remind us that the world is diverse, and the rules we take for granted can seem surprisingly alien to others. Subscribe and like.